Plants in the genus Agave are native to and used throughout Central America. Tequila and mezcals are among the spirits derived from these agaves, and many exhibit a uniquely wonderful earthy, grassy, and fruity character in the glass. Several hundred species exist, but they all share some commonalities in that they store their spare carbohydrates, usually saved for reproduction, as fructose-based fructans. Agaves can live a long time, but they only reproduce once, right before they die. And at this point, their central core is full of these fructans that we can convert to fermentable sugars or distilling in all sorts of ways. Let's go. We are going into Mexico now to discuss two categories of agave-based spirits, our tequila and mezcal. Global recognition and appreciation have exploded over the past decade, and exports are now reaching into new markets. The old shot with salt and lime is still around, but you'll just as likely find tequila and mezcal in a brandy snifter today, or as a sought-after ingredient in high-end cocktails. We'll look at the growth cycle of agave, along with processing, fermentation, distillation, and maturation options. We'll also show you what to expect on the label and how to decipher it. Agave are different than many other plants in that they spend their entire life preparing to reproduce once and then die. While an annual plant does this, it's unusual for a plant with a 5 to 30-year lifespan to do this. This presents a clear challenge to ensuring you have enough agave on hand during any single year. Even with this long life, agaves are farmed, but especially with mezcal, the agaves may be found by foraging. Now, the plant builds up reserves in its central core, which sits just above the ground and the root system, and protects it with spiky leaves. These cores, or piñas, named after their resemblance to a pineapple, are filled with fructans. That's the name for the carbohydrate storage that the plant uses. Rather than starch, these agaves use fructans to store their carbohydrates. Now, while starches are glucose-based, fructans are high in fructose, hence the name. Now, ideally, you want to harvest these piñas at their maximum ripeness, just before they use all of these reserves to send up a large flowering stalk to have sex before they die. At maturity, those fructans have a ripe and complex flavors of chili peppers, kind of grassy, herbal, and olive. You can see the tool here used to knock off those spiky leaves to leave just the core for bringing to the distillery. Now, not all agave piñas look like these ones. They can be large or small and shaped more like a cone instead of a ball. With large ones, quite often they are cut in halves or quarters before the next step. So we have collected our piñas and brought them back to the distillery. Similar to our grains, we do need heat to convert those fructans back into fermentable sugars. In agave spirits, we have several ways this is done. Traditionally, we would dig a pit and line it with stones, and then we'd make a fire in the pit and heat up those stones and have lots of embers. Then we'd lay our piñas in the pit, cover them with earth, and let just enough air in so that it burns gently over days or even weeks. Yes, we are softening those piñas and converting the fructans to sugars, but we are also creating those Maillard reactions in this process. Now, we have to be careful that we roast the piñas and don't burn them. Now, similar to the way peat smoke aromas attach to grains, the smoke of the fire will be imparted into the piñas, giving many agave spirits, especially many mezcals, their signature smoky character. Another quicker way to do this heating process is with a brick or stone oven, where we can get the job done and still get those roasty Maillard reactions. And in later lectures, we'll talk about cooked juice miel from these ovens. Then we can further expedite the process with a huge pressure cooker called an autoclave. Then we have to crush our softened cooked piñas that now have some fermentable sugar inside. We can do the traditional hand crushing, which is a very strenuous manual process and not really super effective at getting all the sugars out from these fibrous roasted piñas. Or we can use a large stone wheel called a tahona and the tahona process. Or we can use an industrial mill to smash them up. There's another machine called a diffuser that was deployed that can shoot hot water through the shredded piñas and is very effective at getting sugar out of the fibers. A modification of this has led to feeding uncooked piñas into the diffuser, hit them with some acid to soften them up, and then blast that water through them, giving you fermentable sugary liquid without cooking, but hence no Maillard or cooking flavors. This process is controversial, and while it's claimed that it can still make a quality end product, very few producers will own up to using these diffusers. However, if you're producing a product for the lower end, more affordable market, then you do what you need to do to maximize efficiency. For the consumer, there is no legal requirement to state production methods for tequila, with one exception, which happens at this stage of production called formulation. So right now we have a fermentable sugary liquid from our harvest agave plants. Now remember, these take a while to grow and become mature, and piñas can therefore be expensive given the time and labor to get them to the distillery. Maybe we can only get our hands on unripe or barely ripe piñas, and maybe we want to stretch this agave juice a bit farther due to demand for our product, or because we want to make it cheaper than traditionally. So in this case, we find some other fermentable sugars from, say, corn syrup or cane sugar and throw that in. Tequila, not mezcal, but tequila has built a market as a cheap alcohol, and its success came before any real legal standards which could be applied. So tequila can have 49% other sugars in it. Yes, and these do have a specific labeling requirement. Now, the crushing process, except in those diffusers, will have a lot of fibers in it. Some producers leave these in the liquid during fermentation, and some filter it out. We don't have to add enzymes, but often we do to help in the process, especially in our more bulk operations. Having those fibers and a slower fermentation with ambient yeasts is associated with more flavor and complexity of flavor in tequilas and is seen in higher end versions. In mezcal, it's much more common to almost always do this. There are no restrictions on still type for tequila, and like the diffuser, it's hard to know whether a big column still like this was used. In future lectures, we'll explore the NOM system, which can give us some clues at least. But most mid-tier and above producers are using double pot distillation. Now, we do have crazy stills like this still used in mezcal, where they can pull spirit right from those little tubes at about 60% ABV, with very pronounced and intense flavors and aromas. Oak aging wasn't traditionally done, but it has been deployed, especially in tequila. The goal is usually, though, to preserve that agave character, not to have it compete with oak. So the oak used tends to be large, fairly neutral casks to allow some smoothness to develop. However, we are seeing small, heavy toast aging, especially for the American market, and to sort of woo the bourbon drinkers. We even see some barrel finishing now, like in Scotch. Now, caramel coloring is often used to tweak color, especially for those aged versions that we'll talk about in a second. There is also an additive soup called abocante that can legally be used to finish tequila before bottling. We have glycerol, sweeteners, various flavorings can be in this. This was mostly pushed by some large producers who were being squeezed by efforts to regulate processes. Now, you will see abocante con in mezcal, but that's different, and we'll discuss those in the 300 level lectures. Agave grows throughout Central America and into North and South America. And again, agave spirits include many more examples than tequila and mezcal, but these two categories are the ones we see outside of the region. Tequila is dominated by big household brands, some internationally known, while mezcal is still mostly done by small producers. In both cases, there's legal controls with regard to the areas of production. Tequila is made using only one species of agave, the Agave tequilana Weber or Blue Weber, which is easy to see why with its blue tones. These take 7 to 10 years to mature and will show character from its growing environment, especially elevation, with higher elevation showing more fruity character and lowland showing an earthy green vegetal character. Both of these environments are in the state of Jalisco, which is the main area of production. with another designated area in 5 other states to the north and east. Now, tequila has limited legal production labeling with either tequila, which can be up to that 49% other sugars, or the tequila 100% agave, which means all the fermented sugars are from the Blue Weber agave. Aging designations may also be on the label, with our Blanco, occasionally Plata or Silver category, having no minimum aging. The Joven, Oro, or Gold also has no minimum aging, with the color provided by those Aguacate additives. Then our Reposado, which is aged for at least 2 months in oak, with no limit on cask size, toast, previous use. Then we have our Añejo, or extra aged, having a minimum of 1 year in barrel, and extra añejo with a minimum of 3 years in oak. Again, a little caramel color may be deployed here to ensure the color is as expected for the category and for consistency. Now, for a long time, mezcal was taken to mean any spirit made with agave, but in order to get some legal protections for the name, it has recently been legalized to have conditions attached when that word is on the label. Now, while any regulations tend to be controversial, these were designed to protect the small traditional producer, as you'll see in a minute. Now, capital M mezcal is only made in 9 states, with Oaxaca being the center of production, at least with regards to volume. Now, any agave species can be used, but agave angostifolio Ha, or espadín, is the most popular. And it's actually hard to tell the difference between it and the Blue Weber. They both look quite similar, which makes sense because espadín is Blue Weber's grandfather genetically. Now, while about 90% is espadín, any other agave species can be used, and the open pit process is not mandatory, so the smoky character may not be present. Although for most mezcals, that smoky character matched with intensive vegetative earth and fruit character are desired as a mark of quality. Now, pot and columns are permitted, with these ancient wood or clay stills still being used. Here is one, but they can look quite different. There is a pot inside the brick oven, and then this clay top that is sealed with mud and fibers from the agave. The bowl at the top has cold water running through it and is exposed inside the still and acts like a condenser. Well, it is a condenser. The distillate drips down and is caught by a spoon-like catcher at the end of that bamboo pole that's sticking out the side, where it then drips into the plastic jug. These take incredible skill to run properly. They can generate intense flavors and plenty of Maillard reactions. Now, the cut for the group 3s is often done very late, which gives a sharp texture to the spirit. Now, while we have age designations like tequila, we have our Blanco or Joven being unaged, Reposado 2 months, and Añejo a year, just like in tequila. The nature of mezcal and the vibrancy as it leaves the still, given its production, it usually just doesn't see oak aging for the most part. It's not traditional either. So mezcal does have legal production classifications on the label, possibly as detailed as any other category. Our mezcal will sometimes state 100% agave or 100% maguey, but if it says mezcal on the bottle, it has to be 100% agave, but just not a single species like in tequila. Our broadest category is just mezcal, which allows for any still type, any method of crushing the agave, any fermentation vessel, etc. Our artesanal category, think artisanal, must be cooked in a pit or in a stone oven. No diffusers are allowed. And then simple milling or crushing tools can help out with the Tahona, stone wheels, or the hand tools. The stills here have to be directly heated pots of either wood, copper, or clay. Then we have our ancestral category, which mandates only roasting pits, only Tahona or hand crushing, and then direct heat in a wood or clay still like we show here. So takeaways from this lecture on agave spirits. You should be familiar with the life cycle of agaves and how they are harvested, and then also how they are processed. We have our formulation step, and then also which stills are used across the category. You should also understand the labeling terms for tequila and also for mezcal, as well as those really cool production processes. See you next time.